So what is going on, guys? It's Triple G here, back with another Godfall video, and in today's video we're going to be going through everything that you need to know for new players, given that the Challenger Edition is now free on the PlayStation Plus store for the most of December, and it's also going to be free on the Epic Game Store for a week in December as well. So we're going to do a guide for the basics so everybody knows exactly what it is, so there's nothing that is missed. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Otherwise, let's get straight into this video. So when firing up Godfall for the first time, it's important to know what it is you have available to you and how the basics of those work so that you can get the most out of this video game. So first of all, let's start off with the weapons and the weapon types. Now, there are 5 different weapon types available in Godfall. There are dual blades, great swords, long swords, pole arms, and warhammers. Now, I'm a massive favorite of the long sword, but the spear as well are 2 of the weapons that really do stand out when actually using the combat system in Godfall. Now, each weapon has a kind of DPS. So you'll see at the moment I have the Sword of Courage in front of me. Now, the physical DPS is here. Now, this is really important, given that there was an update to Godfall which stated that the type of weapon now actually applies a ailment to them. So previously ailments were triggered off different things. Now the weapon will apply an actual ailment. So physical actually applies bleed, fire weapons will apply burn, and so on and so on. So there are multiple different types of ailments. There is bleed, poison, curse, ignite, chill, and shock. So if you want to build a build that kind of embraces the synergies like my bleed build, then I highly recommend physical, because physical will apply bleed, and so on and so on. Why this is important, if you take a look at this primary stat here, it says whenever you inflict bleed, shoot up to 2 projectiles up that deal 801 physical damage to an enemy, which will also then trigger this again, and it goes round in a loop and you do a ton of damage. So that's really important to understand that. In terms of the combat system itself, there are a ton of offensive moves that you can do in addition to the standard buttons. So let's go through them. First up is a death blow, which is defeating an enemy by hitting a weak point. Some pieces of equipment will grant you bonuses after you've used a death blow, like guaranteeing you a takedown, or next hit is guaranteed a crit. So it can really work well. As we just touched on it, takedowns are a move that you can do from a large distance away. And then you can click on R3 if you're using controller, and you will close the distance on an enemy and take them down, dealing a ton of damage. And they can also critical hit. This is really good for just clearing up that one pesky ranged enemy, as you can cross the battlefield really quickly. You may have noticed down the bottom right of the screen, when you have 2 weapons equipped, that you will have another weapon that sometimes is glowing gold. This means that it is charged, and it is charged with what's called a polarity attack, which basically means that you can unleash this polarity attack by swapping weapons after you've built up enough charge. A polarity attack releases a shockwave of damage that damages nearby enemies in an AoE. So it's basically free damage. Now, I personally don't use polarity that often, but you can lean into it very well by speccing into a lot of spirit into your augments and into your gear, and this will mean that you'll be able to do a ton more damage with polarity attacks. Then there's Rampage. Now, Rampage is really simple. Essentially, if you land multiple hits in a short period of time, you will enter Rampage, meaning that you will do an extra 20% more damage, and the only way that that will deactivate is if you don't damage anybody within the next 10 seconds. So you're able to just stay in the action and get an extra 20% damage. Then let's talk about Soul Shatter. So Soul Shatter is a mechanic that you also can lean into to do tons and tons of damage. And basically what this means is that when you hit enemies with your basic attack, you'll see a little white bar around their health. And if you follow that up with a heavy attack, you're guaranteed to remove that damage away with Soul Shatter. And this can be chained with other abilities to make other enemies explode around you, and as I said before, if you lean into it, it can be really effective. A couple of other things to note are the weak points. Now, the weak points are kind of the gold circles that appear on enemies. Now, this can be used to do extra damage, obviously, because it is a weak spot and it is vulnerable for the enemy, but it can also be used to trigger other abilities. There are other abilities in Godfall that allow you to charge up your Archon Fury faster or bring your northern and southern techniques on a little bit faster. Your northern and southern techniques are the abilities that you can trigger that you'll see on the screen right now, where I shoot across the screen and do a series of combo damages. And this can basically then trigger other abilities, so you can get yourself in a nice little loop. So it's really important to pay attention to those. Then there's Archon Fury, which is essentially like the Godfall version of a super. You prop this by charging this up over time, and then when you use it, you will get a ton of extra damage. You will also take less damage while in Archon Fury. Activating Archon Fury will deliver a powerful initial effect, and while Archon Fury is active, each Valipate gains a unique ongoing trait. So it's really, really good to use in special emergencies or if you're just about to fight a boss. Finally, the one thing that we need to touch on is Breach. Now, you will come across some enemies that are shielded and they will have a special bar underneath. Now, these Breach enemies, these guys will be tough to take down, but if you do break through their Breach and you can use skills that will give you more Breach damage, you will then make them vulnerable and they will become stunned for a limited amount of time. The final thing I want to touch on with Godfall is the actual upgrade system. If you go over to the upgrade station in Godfall, you will see that you are able to upgrade things. So, for example, you can select an item here and you're able to upgrade it, which will allow it to give it more damage. So you see here, it goes from 318 to 334. Or if this was an amulet or charm, it would increase the ability. Or what you can do is you can actually enchant this as well, which will basically mean that you can increase its rarity. So it goes from a blue here to a purple. So nothing is ever truly lost. I would recommend that you get it on level, but you can actually pull things all the way through if you want to, and you can upgrade a card for up to 5 levels. The final thing to touch on is that you can actually get cursed items in Godfall. Now, cursed items provide you with an opportunity to actually gain a significant bonus. So in this case, it's critical hit damage, and it's 42% at the moment. Because it's cursed, it's minus 42%. If we lift the curse by defeating enemies in the Ascendant Tower of Trials with it equipped, we will then get that extra 42% critical hit damage and we'll also get the primary damage as well for the primary ability. So it's worth noting that if you get cursed items as well, some of these will give you significant bonuses. So there you have it, guys. A lot to have gone through on this video, but essentially we have covered the weapon and damage types, breaches, death blows and takedowns, rampage, weak points and soul shatter, and how to upgrade some of that loot if you are really, really happy with the role that you have. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the flip.